keeps a tax director of a multinational busy these days? Is it tax planning? Is it liquidity? Is it government subsidies or tax incentives, reporting deadlines, or something else? If you are curious to hear more, stay tuned to this new episode of Tax Takes. My name is Premkumar Baldewsing from IBFD, and my guest today is Annemiek Kale, the former global head of tax of Arla Foods. Annemiek has worked as an in-house tax manager for 15 years with extensive experience in the fast-moving consumer goods business. She was a tax director for Danone before she joined Arla Foods. Annemiek, let's get started because I'm sure that you have some interesting stories for us.
Thanks.
Let's start with, a general remark that COVID-19, it has a huge impact, including tax consequences on the worldwide activities of multinationals. And we would like to hear something about your experience as a tax director right now. For instance, the impact on the tax function, because I can imagine that you are working from home. How do you deal with risk management in a crisis situation? Because a crisis, it impacts certainty. For instance, with regard to APAs, advanced pricing agreements, because it might be that your company doesn't satisfy critical assumptions anymore. Tell us something about reporting deadlines. Can you still keep them? Is a deferral of deadlines, for instance, within the DAC 6, that's a European directive, whether that will be helpful? And let's start with those questions. I will follow up.
Okay. Thank you, Prem. Happy to be here today. So, your first question is about how is COVID impacting the tax function? How do you still function as a tax team while working from home? And even though I think in many companies it's kind of normal, it was normal before COVID-19 hit us that you could work from home. Because all the tools are there. We work via email, we have Teams or Zoom or other, apps that could help us meet digitally. But still, it's not the same as doing it, all of us, all the time. And doing that in the crisis also meant figuring out who's able to work on what hours, because the schools were closed as well. And if you have small kids running around at home, then normal working hours might not be such a good idea. It's also there's also a good thing about having that family situation. You get to know your team a little bit better because a kid or a pet, something else walks through the screen, and that's fine. So we had a few simple rules in the team, which was we have a coffee meeting every morning, just to say hi to each other and knowing that everybody's okay. Also discussing, things that might be fun or, needed to be known, share some information from top management that I was able to share with my team, share information from everybody. So that was a good start of the day. Then it was critical that we aligned with everybody who's able to work when, so that you know that. And I kept tracking on to-do lists for everybody so that things still get done, right? There are things that might be postponed, you need to communicate about it, but there are a lot of things that you still want to get done. And it was remarkably, well, I would say easy to get things done. Of course, you get a little bit more short-term related, and that's entirely also because the business is short-term related. You can't just continue working on the longer-term projects for which you needed meetings with lots of people, etc., because then it gets more complex. But for the period of emergency, it was working fine. I always stress to my team that picking up the phone or organizing a chat via Teams or Zoom is better than to write a very long email, because very long emails tend to go around and cause problems rather than solve issues. So that was the learning on that.
Okay, thank you. That's nice peep into the kitchen of your day-to-day working with other people, with colleagues. Regarding risk management, you are responsible as a tax director, and this crisis, as I said, it impacts tax certainty. Have you dealt with it? Have you stumbled upon it? How do you deal with it?
Yeah. Of course, it depends highly on the company. And in an FMCG or food company that I was working in, because people start working from home, being at home all the time, people also started hoarding. Remember, in the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis, in many countries, people were hoarding for food, necessities of life, etc. So in a food company, that means that there's more pressure on producing and selling things than in very different companies that might be hit completely, like a hotel business or an airliner, where the business just stops. So it was the other way around. But nevertheless, there are relief measures or deadline extensions or other things that you need to know what it is about. It is also critical to what we made is we made a little matrix showing all the rules in the most important countries with the pros and the cons, because it might seem like a benefit to postpone or payment or whatever, but if there's an interest rate on it that makes it actually more expensive, then you might not want to use it if it's not entirely necessary, right? Or even if there is a general postponement of deadlines and paying deadlines like we had in Denmark, it might still be that if you would apply that to other countries, or if it affects the foreign currency policy of the Treasury team, they need to know it. So we needed to be in very close connection to the Treasury team, saying this is the amount that we talk about. This is the timing that we talk about. It's an extension of a few months. And then, of course, you still need to pay it later on. Mm-hmm. That was really, really important to inform management and make sure they can make an informed decision whether to go for the measures or not. And it also meant that we had to be flexible all the time. So go left or right, doesn't matter. We just need to be prepared.
Yeah, agile. Being agile is the new word.
I hate the word, but this would be the right application for it.
Okay, Annemiek, do you expect tax administrations to be more or less strict in audits or applying the tax rules given the current situation or even post-corona? What is your expectation on that?
My experience with tax administrations is that they really differ per country. It's almost a cultural thing, right? And so I think it's too soon to tell. I really don't know how they're going to pick up on audits. I know that the Germans would probably follow their normal pace. But it also has to do with the strictness of the measures on Corona in those countries, because it's not just businesses that are working from home, it's also tax inspectors that are working from home. And they might have rules against going into a company's office and asking for their books. They might want to do it more on a distance by purely on a digital way. We don't know that. So it will be interesting to see.
Yeah, I can imagine that liquidity is an important issue within multinationals, because revenue can have dropped down because of the crisis. Supply chain is the magic word these days. It is affected both from the supply side as well as from the demand side. And it has an impact on the liquidity of a multinational. Does tax planning has a role within, increasing liquidity?
I think in this COVID crisis, all I've done is be busy in organizing our knowledge and the way we do things to serve the business. So even though a food company can be almost benefiting from a crisis like this, they need adjustments. And the most important thing is to make sure that the production facilities are up and running, that people don't get sick, or if they do get sick, that the company is still able to run that production facility. That has, for instance, led, and also the demand from consumers and supermarkets saying, well, there's so much ask for, in this case, a certain yogurt product. I need more of that and I need less of the other flavors. So you would, for instance, see that a production facility would focus on only 2 or 3 products instead of 25, which means they can produce more because they don't have to clean their machines in between, which can mean that tax needs to know and adapt to transfer prices on whatever is going between the companies, because you might have a setup where the volume of the production is impacting the price in the end. So, but it's all about that. A few other things were just in getting the production facilities ready to keep running. Protective measures, so they needed these plastic plates as protection. They needed face masks, and they were importing those, but it was more complex to do it in the legal entity that needed to buy it. So we had to appoint another legal entity, and that's fine. That's just practicalities. You need to be flexible enough. As a tax team, you can really not say, well, that would have an issue, an impact on my TP model. I don't want that. No, you just need to go and figure out a way to deal with it.
Yeah. There are, there could be some potential cross-border tax consequences because Arla, like Danone, these are multinationals, which indicates that you are active in a number of countries, cross-border. And what we read in literature or in the recent OECD report is that this crisis, because the lockdowns, people cannot move, they can have residency consequences, permanent establishment consequences, place of effective management of a group company, consequences for expats. Have you run into those problems, and how do you deal with them?
Well, the things that I've been looking at is really there's a group in most multinationals of commuters that need to be in a certain place. They work in a certain place. They have usually a salary split between 2 or 3 countries even. And that travel pattern, of course, is radically changed. So you need to understand, is this going to be okay from a wage tax? Deal with that. So it's important to stay in touch with all those people and say, would you consider continuing the way you were doing? Because then you need to make an adjustment. For the shorter term, many authorities have said that, look, we will be practical around this. We'll just look at the historic travel pattern, because that's a normalized pattern that we will still apply for the salary split. But it's not uncommon for people to think about their personal lives' impact. Also keep in mind that travel is not going to be that easy as it was before for a while, because it's not only wearing a face mask, it's also, there's less flights, etc. And we don't know how long it lasts. So it could have a major impact on where people want to work. It could save the company money because there's lower travel costs, and it turns out to be working from home thing, right?
Yeah.
But on the longer term, Prem, the effective place of management, I think it's too soon to tell. We really need to go into more normalized situation to figure this out.
I understand that. Last question, Annemiek. Time is flying, I see. Do you have contact with other tax directors of other multinationals? And could you share very shortly what issues they face and how they deal with them?
Yeah, I do, of course. There's a few networks I participate in. It's very interesting to see how the differences in business lead to a difference in what to apply for and what the work is that the tax team is doing into looking into those measures. Because if the business is really impacted, for instance, if you have a business in the Netherlands and there are these relief measures in place that would also potentially have a downside later on. You might not be able to reorganize the way your business wants to do, etc. You really need to understand. And of course, the measures were put in place quickly. So I've seen some other tax directors being very close to the Ministry of Finance to understand completely what it means. And then, of course, you go into the details of the dots and the commas, like we always do as tax people, understanding completely what it is about. And those differences make it very interesting, right? You can really see that it still, gives a good platform of talking to each other. Tax people are maybe a strange bunch in companies. We all understand each other, even though the businesses can be extremely different. And one can benefit almost from the crisis, and the other has a huge impact. You still are in tax, and you still deal with the same rules.
Yeah, so there is not a one size fits all. It really depends on the character of your business. Annemiek, I want to thank you for sharing your insights in this short video of 15 minutes. And to our viewers, I would really ask them to keep on watching IBFD Tax Takes. Thanks, Annemiek, again.
Pleasure, Prem. Have a good day.